Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Jerred Moon. The Garage Gym Athlete Podcast is a result of my desire to build better humans, unequivocal coaches, and autonomous athletes. I've spent the last several years obsessing over program design, nutrition, and every other way you can optimize human performance. This podcast distills the latest scientific research with what I've learned and blends it with the not-so-scientific field of mental toughness. We are here to build you into a dangerously effective athlete. If you enjoy this podcast, you can find out more about our training at garagegymathlete.com. And if you want to pursue more into the field of coaching and programming, head to endof3fitness.com. Thanks for listening. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Here with the crew today, Kyle Schrum, Ashley Hicks, Joe Courtney.
Hey,
how's everyone doing?
Hello.
Good.
Just going. That's how good we're doing.
Yeah. Well, let's get straight into the science here. I won't beat around the bush. I actually really like their title. I give the scientific community a hard time at times for their lack of creativity. They're just like, yeah, reverse plank with the blah, blah, like just all this.
It's normally what the conclusion is what the title is.
Yeah.
Yep.
And theirs kicks off with, ain't just imagination, exclamation. Effects of motor imagery training on strength and power performance of athletes during detraining. This is done in 2021. Very cool study. If you've read Killing Comfort, I put similar studies in the book that kind of talk about what we're going to be talking about today. And it's how you can use your brain, how your brain alone, and how that can equate to actual muscular and power increases. And so I think it's really cool to go over this stuff. And the first study I came across with this type of thing was a long time ago, and it had to do with like training like the finger muscles. And so it was kind of like, that's really cool, but your fingers got stronger. I don't know what you want me to take away from that. This one, much different. So there were 30 male basketball players that participated in this study, and all of the subjects had at least 6 years of high-level basketball experience and at least 5 years of resistance training experience. So that's good. We had a pretty well-seasoned, for the most part, group of athletes. And they ended up doing 6 weeks worth of motor imagery training. So they would visualize themselves going, kind of doing the workout. And there were two different motor imagery groups. So they're the groups that were, I'm just going to call it pretending or visualizing lifting heavy, and the other one visualizing lifting fast without getting into further details. So more power output, which we talked about, I think, on a recent podcast and previous podcast, one that's more strength based. And then they kind of had the control group and they didn't really do anything. And to get into all of it, there was like a 3-week familiarization period before the 6 weeks of this motor imagery training. And they would do that. They did that for 6 weeks. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. And they were doing sprint training. That was my other point. It wasn't like there was no exercise, but they were definitely in a detraining period because they were doing only sprint training. They would do 3 sessions of motor imagery training per week. And I already talked about the groups. And overall, what you would expect to happen, or maybe not, depending on how powerful you think the brain is, the motor imagery group outperformed the control group, and the one that wanted to get stronger got stronger. The one who had more favorable strength outcomes, the one who wanted to get faster, more power, they had better power-based outcomes, and the control group actually was detrained to some degree. And so the ultimate takeaway from the actual study, I'm just going to read their very last line conclusion. It says, during periods of forced detraining, mental imagery practice seems to be a viable tool to maintain and increase physical performance capacity among professional athletes. So this is really cool. I have a lot of details I pulled out of this. That's why it was kind of hard for me to go through my notes, because if I like went through everything that I actually typed out, we would be here for about 15, 20 more minutes. So I was picking out the parts that I liked. Big overview here of people just doing mental imagery, visualization training, not really exercising. The test was done on a Smith machine, which I get it. Like, I know we pick on people for these things at times, but it's science, right? Like, that's such
Better than single knee extensions.
a Smith machine can only go one direction, right? And so that's why they do it, because if you had like a free weight bench press, there could be a factor of a person not going straight up, or like they had poor form or something like that. So I'm not gonna get too into those kind of things. But what did all of you think about this? The result, I want to actually ask you guys: were you surprised at the result of this study, and what other things did you find interesting?
100% mind blowing. More so on the strength side, I think, and that's just because you didn't think normally you would have to actually work a muscle to get stronger. Mm-hmm. But the power side, as I was reading more and thinking more about it, I think it kind of makes sense, because a lot of times power exercises require a lot of coordination, and coordination is coming from your mind a lot, and mind muscle connection, and just visualizing yourself doing it might actually help you to think of the sequence that you have to do to be explosive, to fully extend, to do things in the right chain of events and sequence, so that yes, you can be more powerful. So I think the power part really makes sense, and it also had the largest improvement, like way more improved than strength. Strength was like a minimal one, but it was pretty mind-blowing that it did it all. Power though, yeah, 100%. I think it could be something that people should or could use more often. That you want me to keep going, or just you?
Well, yeah, I mean, Kyle and Ashley, how did you guys, were you surprised by the results of the study overall, without getting into all your takeaways and points?
I mean, we talk about how powerful the mindset is when it comes to training all the time. So I wasn't super shocked, but kind of like Joe, I didn't expect such a improve. It wasn't like they added a whole lot of strength, to their maxes or anything, but they did improve. And so just improving simply through thinking through the motion, I think that's really, really powerful stuff.
Yeah, I wasn't shocked by the results at all. I think you can do a lot with your mind, and I'll go over it a little bit more on my takeaways, but yeah, I wasn't shocked at all, but I was glad we were covering something like this.
Cool. All right, Joe, what else do you have?
Yeah, so I think I'm starting to realize that my favorite studies are the ones where they're taking teams, like sports teams, people that are already organized in athletics together, and just being like, hey, coach, can I just borrow your athletes and give them a training protocol? And athletes are just going to follow it. They're going to follow it better. And the fact that they're going to be experienced, they're already on a training regimen. So I think just seeing that in these studies, there's some of the better ones out there. This is just kind of like an aside note outside of the study, but
well, and for the coach to agree, like, hey, we want your players to not work out for 6 weeks.
Yeah,
like it's quite an ask.
There was other ones. I know we did one on rowing that did something with strength on rowers instead of like conditioning, and yeah, I guess they just trusted enough, or off-season training, they think they can make it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, the main one that I just wanted to highlight, which I already did, was on power, and that is just visualizing for power could be a mixture of coordination. And this kind of goes right into my killing comfort thing, and that is like, we have Fit Week coming up, and we have power metrics there, and I know plate jumps is something that so many people struggle with because it's such an awkward movement, and you're trying to be, you need to be really explosive, but you also need to be somewhat coordinated to be explosive and then tuck and all that. So my killing comfort thing would be, the night before anything powerful that you're doing explosive, then just do your own little 10-minute visualization of doing it. But not much else to say, so I'll pass it on to Kyle.
Yeah, like I said, I thought it was really interesting that they improved performance just straight through visualization. Like if I read this correctly, they're not going through the movement at all. Like it's not like they're doing it on air. It's not like an air squat that they're doing, or, you know, they're not laying down on the bench and pushing their arms up with no weight or anything. Like they're literally just visualizing themselves doing that. They're not moving at all. They're standing still, just visualizing it in their mind. And so I think that's really, really cool. And I tend to use visualization the most like in between sets, just during my training. Like especially if something felt off, or for some reason I was kind of wonky on my back squats or something like that. Like I had a little bit of trouble standing it back up properly or something, just a little tweak that needs to be done. Like I'll just, during my rest time in between sets, I'll just think about, you know, the right way to do it. But it really made me think about the Free Solo movie. You guys ever seen that? Free Solo?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, but it's about this guy. So Free Solo is just, it's rock climbing with no ropes and nothing holding you to the rock. It's literally just, you got a bag of chalk around your waist and that's it. And so, but it's about this guy, Alex Honnold, who free solos this, I forgot what's it called. What's the place called?
El Capitan.
Yeah. So anyway, fascinating movie, just unbelievable. But one of the things that he does, obviously he's doing training runs up through there, just trying to get really, really familiar with the route. And he has ropes for that and all that kind of stuff. But then he just goes and he just does it with no ropes. He just gets up one morning and just goes. But you see during the film where he's like in his van, like his camper van that he has, where he's taken so many notes on all the training runs that he's done. And he's sitting there thinking about how he's going to turn his hands and how he's going to turn his feet, and just that there's exactly this amount of space between this hold, and I had to move to this place. And you just see him sitting there in his van, just visualizing this whole route up this mountain. And so that just kind of made me think of that, of just how powerful visualization really is. And, you know, this guy goes up there and just, he climbs this freaking mountain that a lot of people can't climb with ropes. And he just climbs it, just him and gravity. And really stressful watching it, but it's just a really cool concept about how powerful visualization is.
That is an awesome movie. And that was like probably one of my biggest takeaways when I saw the movie too, was like how dedicated that guy was.
So I can't attest to the Thunderbirds because I don't really know, but the Blue Angels, when they go through their flight plan or their show, they afterwards debrief with no tapes. They don't look at anything. They just close their eyes and they go through what they've done by flying, and they talk it through, and they've got like their lead guy that helps them, but then they also have to like visualize it. And then if they were just like a millimeter off or something like that, they're like, you know, they have to basically, I forget what the word is that they use, but they basically like have to say, you know, sorry, I was a millimeter off. This time I won't do that. And it just helps them get better. And they're just doing it all through their mind and all visualization. So the mind is powerful. And if you don't think it is, it can definitely, I mean, I've heard of people talk about like, if I feel like I'm getting sick, I tell myself I'm not getting sick. Stuff like that. Like I've heard some crazy things of people doing just with, could be visualization or just training your mind to do different things. My killing comfort for this one is practice visualization for things that you might want to get better at. That is not just training. Stuff that maybe, I don't know, that you're trying to work on maybe for a job or something like that, but anything that you wanted to tackle that you think that you want to get better at, potentially, you know, use this technique. And maybe even for what I loved that they did was they visualized it all the way through. So they didn't just start with a lift, right? They visualized themselves walking up to the rack, unracking it, then squatting, and then all the way through to racking it back up, right? So I think that has something to do with it too. Like don't skip steps, visualize the whole process of whatever it is that you're trying to do.
So just two things on yours. This team has actually done, I think I saw that this team's actually done visualization before, but with free throws. So they specifically just did it for 3 free throws, and other basketball teams have done that as well. So I guess they already had some practice in visualization. And then the second one, you know who else did visualization? Cool Runnings bobsled team in the
so right.
Kyle,
Kyle won't
you
get
don't-
it.
Sorry,
Kyle and
you won't.
Ashley had some awesome examples, and Joe, you're bringing the average down with that one a little,
Why
or
is that-
up. I don't know which one is it. I don't.
I'm gonna go up. That's a great reference.
Joe had
How
to
did-
come in and take his jab at me.
How does cool
And-
runnings make it into our conversations as
I'm
often as it
just
even
skilled.
does?
I'm gonna go watch the movie today. That way Joe can never mention it again.
No,
Yeah.
man.
As soon as you watch that movie, I'll ship you your shirt.
Yeah.
All right, that was some deep inside jokes there, but yeah. So to Ashley's point, I actually put this in the book. I do think that anytime we're doing something physical, visualization is huge. I feel like it's a little bit harder if you do a lot of your work on your computer, like what you're going to visualize. But I know in pilot training, that's probably where I got introduced to visualization the most. And they didn't really call it visualization necessarily, but we called it chair flying, right? And I thought it was so funny when we started, we're like, hey, we're in the most advanced pilot training on the planet Earth. Here's your poster board, your roll up poster to put on the wall.
You like put it in your office. And
Yeah,
had
and
your
I'm like-
drawers out. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, this is it, guys. This is the best the government has to offer. I mean, all jokes aside, they did have multi-million-dollar simulators and like everything else available, but that's kind of where you start, is just basic visualization. Even at their it used to be called initial flight screening. Now I think it's initial flight training or something like that, because it can't be screened anymore. But you go, and then they have these, like, they're just fake cockpits, like made out of wood. And I thought that was funny too. When I showed up there, I was like, what? We're just going to sit in this, pretend to hit buttons. But after you do it, you realize how helpful it is. You're like, wow, I knew everything I needed to do this entire sortie because I had already practiced it in my brain. And so these things are really powerful. I think that's what got me sold, not necessarily on the power of the mind, but visualization in particular. It can help so much. Until you've done something, I feel like kind of walks you through how powerful it can be. Maybe people will be a little bit more resistant. I think this group here we have is very kind of open to these things, but I know a lot of people are resistant. I know I was kind of resistant to, what things that would seem more woo woo, but now I'm probably way more that direction than I am resistant to any of it. So other things that I pulled out from this study, let's see. Overall, the authors thought that motor imagery would enhance the performance compared to control condition, but they weren't quite sure how this would work. And I think the interesting takeaway is they were kind of trying to come to conclusions on strength versus power and like what exactly would happen. But if you actually look at the data, like, without getting into the numbers, the strength people improved strength and the power people improved power. Like, they improved what they focused on.
Yeah.
And so my thinking is like, what if you just did all of it? What if you're like, okay, here's a dynamic day, I'm going to visualize that. Here's a strength day, I'm going to visualize that. Would the results be that much significantly higher? I think that would go a long way. Trying to see if there's anything else I want to pull out that you guys didn't hit on.
I thought of that. I wonder if you're injured, if this is something that you would do in replacing of something that you can't do, just so that you don't lose what you've had as much. If this would be a good practice for you as well.
And that's kind of what they're saying. Like, when you go into these time periods, like if you have an injury that's actually prevented, like I didn't do this, and I should have, when my back was hurt and I wasn't squatting, I should have just been sitting there every day visualizing heavy back squats the entire time. And I think that would have been helpful. But here's the big thing that I wanted to take away. And I don't know if any of you looked into it, but I was trying to get, like, how much time are we talking? How long are these visualization sessions?
Oh.
And I think it was reported in seconds. I think that's what the outcome here was. For some reason, it wasn't like, you would think that this is like, everyone would want to know this, but it was hard to pull out. And I think it was reported in seconds, and it was anywhere basically from 400 to 500 seconds of visualization. So we're talking about 6 to 9 minutes, something around there. Like, that's how long these people were doing it, because these are also things I look at as like, okay, we're proving through science is proving over and over again how helpful these visualization exercises are in basically every area of our life. But if it's a new habit I need to pick up, I actually have to ask myself, do I have the time for it? Is this
Right.
a new thing I can actually do? And if they're like, yeah, these people spent 3 hours a day visualizing and they got a little bit stronger, but we're talking about 6 minutes on the low end, like 8 minutes on the high end. If I'm looking at this correctly, someone else pulls up the study, and I for some reason have read this wrong, but um, it has like a little S in parentheses, so I think that means seconds. But they didn't get into it any further. That's the only reference of time that I could find. And so anyway, if that's how long it is, that's something we could all pick up. We could add to our warm up, right? We could add to our morning routine, whatever it is that we need to visualize. It doesn't take a lot of time, and if you think about that, it takes you an hour to work out. It takes you a long time to actually put in heavy sets. But if you add these 5 or 6 minutes of just visualizing those sets on top of actually doing the work, your results are going to compound. And I do think 100%, if you can't train, it's a day off, whatever, and you got time, I would say go do it. So that's kind of my killing comfort too, similar to what we've all said, is make this a practice. Like, go do it. Because I actually put this in the book as well, is like, there's no one, I can't really talk to anybody and say, hey, do you believe the mind is a powerful thing? Everyone's gonna be like, of course, yeah, it is. Yeah, like, that's amazing. I'm like, okay, what is your daily mental training practice? If you believe the mind is so powerful, what are you doing every day to kind of harness this power? And that's where we all get lost, right? A lot of people are like, I don't actually do any, I believe it is, but I don't really do anything to make myself better at it. And so that's where we could kill comfort. And I have an entire chapter of the book dedicated to this. It's like, okay, if you believe this to be true, and now we have all these studies saying it's true, why don't you spend an extra 5 minutes per day trying to make yourself a little bit better with a visualization practice? And it doesn't have to be just in the strength training world. Ashley was talking about Scott doing affirmations in the morning. Like, this is very similar to things that I do in my morning routine. Like, you can do these things in different areas of your life. You can visualize being a better parent. That's something you can actually visualize. You can visualize being a better spouse. You can visualize getting a better back squat. But I think I feel like visualization in all of our other areas of life are probably way more important than fitness, because I do feel like at the end of the day, if you're putting in the work with fitness, you're going to see some results. If you want to really like compound those results, okay, let's put in the work and let's do visualization in the fitness world. But if we're lacking in other areas of our life, let's throw some visualization, 5 minutes of visualization there to make that area of our life better. And it's going to be better. So that's my killing comfort is use the power of the brain and harness it and make your life better in doing so.
Starting habits too.
What'd you say? Sorry.
Starting habits. Like, if you want to go to the gym, like if somebody isn't going to the gym, maybe just start visualizing it first. At least like walk yourself to the gym, visualize yourself doing something. I mean, it might sound silly, but yeah,
I know it's
until
good.
you actually do it. Yeah. If somebody really needs to start light, we've always said building the habit with working out anyway. You could just go to the gym, do nothing, and leave just because you're building the habit of going. So visualize it as well.
Yeah, because it's always those little tiny things that make people not take action. And I'll say myself as well. It's not people out there listening like I'm perfect. It's these little things of like the the garage is messed up or it's not organized. I'm gonna have to deal with all that first before I go out and train, or like what clothes am I gonna wear. It's all these small decisions, like when you're waking up at like 5 a.m. and you're like, I don't know what am I gonna do. But if you visualize or at least plan for these things, you're gonna have your brain's already rehearsed it and knows what's about to happen. And that what I've found to be true is it reduces a lot of that resistance that you face when you are trying to develop new habits or do something, because your brain has already, there's no real energy expenditure for the brain when it comes up to this problem, because your brain's thinking, okay, we already know what to do here, so we're just going to work around it and get over it. So yeah, I think that's great. All right, getting into the topic for the day. Joe, what are we discussing?
Yeah, I just wanted everybody to talk about some of their favorite mobility exercises. I know everybody kind of, or at least most people will have ones that they need specifically for which whatever your body needs. And I know I have 2 or 3 that I kind of incorporate regularly because I know what my body needs and what my deficiencies are and things that might hurt here and there. So I just wanted to go over, what some of some of the exercises that we do and why we specifically might do them.
I go first. I call it.
Whoa.
Yep.
Nice.
Well, Joe already called last before we started because he is the mobility guy around here. So I have my top 3, or my 3. So if we added a question to the Garage Gym Athlete podcast, if you could only do 3 mobility exercises for the rest of your life, what would they be? This would be my answer. So it's the saddle, which is where you're kind of sitting on your ankles. That makes sense?
Sitting on your ankles?
Yeah, like your knees bent, sitting on
Oh,
Can
your
you
okay.
demonstrate
Okay.
Yeah.
real quick?
I would totally demonstrate
Like
if
you're about to do a plate
the
jump.
camera would allow.
Okay. Yeah.
And you can either go back to like your hands, or you can go back to your elbows, or you can lay all the way down. And when I first started doing it, it was hands, and then eventually it was elbows, and now it's fully laying down. I could lay down in that position with my knees bent for like 10 minutes, and it's been a long time to get to that spot. So saddle is the first one. I feel like it opens up hip flexors and your quads to a level that you never thought possible. Seated forward fold is the same way. For me, I used to get in the seated forward fold position, which is just legs out in front of you and you're bending over. You can touch your toes or your knees, wherever you're allowed to, your body allows to touch, depending on how flexible you are. So that one, when I did that one several years ago, Ramwad had like it programmed for like 10 minutes. It was like, okay, we're going to do the seated forward fold. And then he normally tells you the time. And it was like for 10 minutes. And I was like, 10 minutes. And it was so painful. Like it hurt the entire time. And it was like hurting in my back. Like it was hurting in my hamstrings, like everywhere. And so that's when I was like, I'm going to do this a lot more. And so I kind of do these stretches just in the morning, like as a part of my morning routine is when I get them done. It's not like a mobility session. I'm not being guided through an app or anything like that. It's just, I do these 3 basically every morning. So seated forward fold, holding that for long periods of time. Again, for me, it was, I could barely bend forward. I think I was touching my knees to being able to touch, like reach my shins. And now I can hold like the bottom of my feet. I can't lay my face on my knees yet. We have a demonstration in Garage Gym Athlete app. I'm not at that level, but maybe by next year I'll be at the just being able to take a nap on my knees in the seated forward fold. And then the last one is the pigeon pose, which I don't even know how to describe if you don't know what it is.
Like one leg straight back and the other one is bent kind of 90s degrees across from you, foot pointing to the opposite side. It's kind of what it is.
What he said. And it
There you
really
go.
helps with your glute and lower back, like a lot, if those areas are getting tight. And the reason I like those 3 is because I feel like it covers some massive lower body muscle groups. So we're talking lower back, we're talking glutes, we're talking quads, we're talking hamstrings. And that's where you're going to get a lot of your problem areas. I mean, upper body stuff, I don't do a lot of upper body mobility. I don't really even know what that is. Like I do some things, but for me, movement is always better. Like crossover symmetry, things like that is always helps so much more with like shoulder problems or upper back issues, more so than like trying to stretch out my shoulders or something like that. For some reason, mobility doesn't seem to be as helpful there for me. And so I like, if I'm not doing these, at least these 3 though, I'll start to get really tight hamstrings, butt, everything else. And I gotta not have that happen because that's where I'll start to get injured. So yeah, those are my 3 favorites and why I like them. Kyle.
Oh man. Okay. Also want to point out with the pigeon pose, we're helping you with your visualization. So if you can try to visualize what it was that Joe was talking about, then there you go.
Actually,
Tying everything together.
Computer.
Oh, gracious.
So the ones that I'm going to say are ones that I incorporate pretty much every day with my warm-ups, because kind of like Jerred said, it's mostly lower body stuff. Just with the track that we've been on for the last year, it's squatting and running. So I need a lot of help on the lower body. But I do have one that's upper body. So we'll do that one too. So the first one is a banded good morning. I don't know if you guys consider that a mobility movement, but I do.
Yeah.
It helps me out a whole lot. And actually I really like using bands for mobility. They're great. I mean, it's resistance. So some people might be like, well, that's technically training. And I'm like, well, whatever. But banded good morning, firing up the lower back, firing up the glutes, the quads as well, and just kind of getting that good stretch in and trying to stay in good position with that as well. Not just because it can be, especially with a good morning, it can be really easy to just kind of round over and then try to work your way back up, but just kind of helping me stay in that good position that I need to be in for squats. Also monster walks. So I do lateral and forward. So you just put a band around your knees and you just sidestep laterally, bring your feet back together. And so that's the lateral monster walk. And then the forward monster walk is just walking forward, just moving one step at a time, walking forward, keeping tension in the band. And so that keeps tension in your legs the entire time. And so all of that right there just kind of warms me up for whether I'm running, we've got conditioning that day and we're doing running, or whether we're doing lower body resistance, like doing all the squatting and the deadlifting and all the other things that we do. So no matter what, I'm firing all of that stuff up in the warm up. So those two, I guess technically the monster walks are two by themselves. So the banded good morning and then the monster walks, the lateral and the forward monster walks. And then also the dead hang. I do dead hangs from time to time. Just literally just grabbing the pull-up bar and just hanging there for typically it's about 30 seconds at a time. Do a few sets of that, just making sure that everything's nice and stretched out, nice. And you can also warm up for pull-ups doing that. Just kind of start the pull, not go all the way up with the pull-up motion, but just kind of start that initial movement with your lats, just getting those nice and warmed up, nice and fired up as well. So the banded good morning, the banded monster walks, and the dead hang, those are the ones that I would say. Also, caveat, not necessarily my favorite mobility movements. I don't know that I have favorite mobility movements because mobility can be kind of tough. It can be hard, especially like getting in the mindset of warming up. And I know a lot of people don't like to warm up and things like that, but these are things that you need to do. And so I wouldn't say they're my favorite movements, but they're ones that I do all the time because I know that I need to. I know that I need to do them.
And monster walks are no joke. They can get pretty painful pretty fast. I've actually had the idea of doing a mile of monster walks for Meet Yourself Saturday, but I don't actually know what would happen to the human body. I would have to like test it a few times first because that would be painful, right? Yeah. Like it normally starts to burn after like 30 steps.
Yep.
And we're talking about a mile. You might
maybe
not
start with a quarter mile.
I was gonna say that would be up there with the quarter mile lunges. So you mentioned you do a quarter mile.
Yeah, I was like, calm down.
Yeah, I might try it.
Okay.
Might try it.
Yeah, that would be tough. Okay. You go ahead and try that and let us know how that goes.
Will you help me test it? We're gonna need at least 2.
All right.
You already do them.
Yeah. Marco will he'll have you put a vest on.
Yeah, Marco, how can we make this worse? Joe wants to bring it down to a quarter mile, and I said a mile. Marco's going to try and bring it up, so it'll probably be a vest. You're right.
Vested. You'll have burpees in there.
Yeah, or something. we're also going to drag a tire. We're just going to wrap a rope around a tire and around our waist, and we're dragging a tire while we're monster walking. I'm going to go with Ashley.
Well, Joe's going last, so by default.
Okay, by default, I didn't actually pick you, Ashley. Like, okay, I didn't actually pick you. You can go.
Thanks, Kyle.
By default.
Love you too. So these are just the ones that I go through daily. Like Kyle said, it's not that I don't like mobility. I do like mobility. I like doing Thursdays for rest day. I do a longer mobility, or I do like a yoga session. That's not like a power yoga, but like actual flow, which just means like you're maybe holding some poses a little bit longer. But so for I have a lower body routine and an upper body routine. I'm going to try to give as much detail on what it looks like as possible. So I have a hip opening stretch. that basically do how you have one leg, one knee on the ground and one knee up, kind of for like kettlebell bottoms up, what that we do. And then I have opposite arm from where the leg is up. So I'm also stretching this out, and I lean forward and I hold that for anywhere from 30 seconds to 60 seconds. And then with that same leg, so I go one leg at a time. So let's say my left leg was up, so I'm going to keep going on my left leg. I then keep that same leg up, and I put my hands down on the ground next to it, which really works like your hamstring. Sometimes I can even feel it like roll if it's super tight. Yeah, it's kind of a weird feeling, but it's like if you sit there long enough and you kind of relax and you breathe through it, you get deeper into that stretch. Again, like what you were talking about, Jerred, I was on my hands first, and then I worked my way down to where my knees, again, you want to make sure your knees out. You don't never want your knees coming in. I was able to get down on my forearms, and now I even twist a little bit with it to try to open it up even more. And then I straighten the leg out. I have the toes pointed up. And then I lean forward and get a calf hammy stretch that way. Again, you can start with your hands on the ground, or you can actually grab opposite arm, opposite leg, and even twist a little bit and get deeper in the stretch. Then I go to pigeon. And I take actually 60 to 90 seconds in pigeon. And I start up actually first and work on that glute more. And then I work my way down and get all the way down to work like the whole leg there. Switch legs. That's my lower body routine. And then sometimes I'll add like a seated forward fold, like Jerred was talking about. And then I'll add a quad stretch, whether that be like I put my leg back and I lean back, or I like to do where I put my knee on a ab mat and put my leg up against a wall. And that one really gets you. For my upper body, I do like arms across. I do a tricep behind the head, and I pull my elbow for some tricep stuff. And then I do some banded arm stretches where I'll have a band hanging from my rack, and I actually sit down in the bottom of a squat and have just kind of work my shoulders a little bit, and I'll turn around and actually pull it from behind and walk forward, put some resistance and hold. And then child's pose is my favorite to work kind of like some shoulders. You're in a child's pose, and then in the middle, instead of being just in the middle, you walk your hand. So if I'm going to have my left arm over here, I walk my right arm over and kind of stretch out this whole side, and then go over and do it on the other side too. So those are my mobility stretches. Joseph, give us yo's.
So I've had a lot of bad mobility for a very long time, and it's just progressively gotten better. That's how I've gotten to know mobilities, because I've had to do it myself. So that's kind of the journey. And I did PT for a very long time. If you listened to the podcast 2 years ago, my hips are fairly tight and tilted. I have like chronically tight quads, and my shoulder, I've always had overhead my shoulder mobility, especially my left shoulder, like big time, to where I either like can't press overhead or pull-ups are just really, really bad. So two of the areas that I'm mostly focused on are the hips and the lats. And I'll start with the lats because nobody's really done upper body. And I know with watching a lot of athletes' videos and like front racks and things like that, lats can be really, really tight on people. And they're so big that they can also give you the most play. So like if you have a hard time with your front rack hold and you're not getting your elbows up, targeting your lats may be a big thing. Or like on pull-ups, if you are kind of, you don't really go to full extension on the pull-ups, you kind of just like stop and there's still a little bit of a bend, you might be your lats as well. So one of the ones I do that is really, really painful is a lat smash. I'll roll on a foam roller. No, sometimes on a lacrosse ball, but I'd rather roll on a foam roller. I'll go up and down on it, and then I'll start at the top and I'll get to a spot, and then I'll lay on it completely, and I'll wiggle side to side on that spot like 10 times or so, and then I'll move like an inch, and I'll wiggle 10 times on that, and I just work my way down, and it can be very, very uncomfortable and painful, like nauseous kind of, at least pain for me on my left side because it's just so bad. But when we just did Murph Burner, because of all the pull-ups that I did, I was having really bad lat issues at that time because I was just for the first half of the year I was just having issues. But after all the pull-ups and then doing that lat smash like 3 times a week, my shoulder basically cleared up and was much better after that because of a mix of mobility, smashing, and strengthening at the same time. A banded lat stretch. I do this one sometimes, not quite as much, but I also wanted to address this because I see people doing this and they kind of do it wrong. And like when you loop the band over to do a lat stretch, a lot of times people just grab onto the band, hold onto the band for dear life, and then just like bend over and lean into it. And you're not really doing that great of stretching. You might feel somewhat of a stretch, but you might actually be like feeling it in your pecs more because you're clenching. You're clenching the band and you're not really stretching anything. You need to like loop the band and like jam your hand into it so that basically jam your hand into it, turn your palm up, and your fingers are just there to kind of keep it in. And then you go overhead and then you kick that same leg back so that it stretches all the way down your side of your body, because the lat basically runs all the way down to your hip.
Wait, so you have your leg back too?
So like the arm that's up, that's in the band, I kick that leg straight back. So I'm basically making like a straight line with the entire side of my body. And then after that, when I'm bent over, if I need some more, I will lean completely into it. And that just really gets the entire side.
On the YouTube side.
Yeah.
People are going to ask us for our mobility routines.
Right. It hurts. It depending on your band resistance and your barbell height or your bar height, you might be able to drop down to a knee. But sometimes you just lean into it. Yeah. So that entire side, it's fire. Elevated pigeon was on my list. I do elevated versus regular pigeon because I have tight hips and it is excruciatingly painful if I do.
So you're saying like one of your hips is up? Is that what you mean by elevated? What do you mean?
So if you like if you go to a box, like for me, 24-inch box is perfect. And I will bend
I see. You're not on the ground. Okay.
Yeah, I will do 24 inches on. So I'll put the side of my like calf across perpendicular to my body. And then I will kind of scooch my leg the opposite direction. And then I'll just kind of squat down with my other leg and lean forward. And it is a little bit more glute heavy versus hip flexor heavy. But if you scoot your leg back enough and depending on how you work your body, you can still get the hip flexor in there. But I mostly do the elevated pigeon to target the glutes, because my absolute, I guess, favorite and one that I do probably 2 to 3 times a week now, because my quads are so tight. And because my quads are so tight, it causes my hips to like tilt forward. And if my hips are tilted forward, I noticed that I was getting some pinching pains in either my back or my hip flexor. And that's the couch stretch. Couch stretch I do all the time and it's super easy because in the evening when we're watching TV is when I do it. I just put on TV, put a pillow down on the ground and do the couch stretch, because from there I can sit back and lean back and I'll try and squeeze my glutes so that my hips stay forced forward. I'll lean back and I'll get my quads, and then for like 20, 30 seconds, and then I'll lean forward and really deep into that lunge and get the hip flexor and do like a rotation back and forth 2 or 3 times both ways. And then I switch legs and I feel so much better. And I can tell when I've done it, especially if I have to squat the next day, because I'm just so much looser and my hip flexors don't get tight at all. But couch stretch, big time. Lat smash, and then the banded lat are big ones, and the elevated pigeon.
I have a question for you.
Yep.
Have you ever gone to a chiropractor?
Nope.
I feel like
just PT.
You might have great benefits from that. It sounds like you've got a lot of alignment issues.
It's possible. It's always murky with chiropractors because there's just so many, and sometimes they're, it's always hard to find
a good one.
Yeah. And even with PT, I know I was lucky enough to find a really awesome PT back in San Diego, so I'll have to figure that out when I get back, because out here's, I don't even know how the hell it works. But chiropractor might be interesting. Let's see what I got.
Awesome. And look, it's mobility and vegetables. All right. They're both not great. 100% necessary. I don't enjoy it. I'm like Kyle. I don't enjoy it. I do it basically because it keeps me injury free. Because I've done it. This is exactly why I think I got injured on BCT to begin with, because my training volume increased significantly, and it was taking up I was taking longer time in the training sessions
Right.
just because they were a little bit longer. I wasn't trying to keep them within 5 blocks or anything like that because it wasn't a public track. I didn't really care about anybody's time. And so it made me have less time at the beginning. And so I was like, you know what? We just won't do any mobility. And so I kicked that right out the window almost at the start. And like, lo and behold, back injury, a couple months in with not doing, I think I was like doing it periodically, but I went from like almost daily or at least a couple times a week to like literally not doing it at all. And then my back was hurt. And then what did I go back to as soon as I had an injured lower back? Mobility every damn day, and just making sure I was checking that box. And now my back is back to 100% and I'm feeling great. So for me, I know it's true. I posted on the Instagram world that you should stretch. And we covered that in a study, right? And I don't know how many physical therapists got mad at me like I was the devil. And, what I was saying is not factual. And I think it's really funny that this is an argument. And the reason I tell people to stretch and do mobility is because every time I don't, I get injured. But there are some studies out there that say you don't need to stretch. And then there are some that say you do. And so stretching is kind of becoming like nutrition. It's like in some parts of the world, but I think you should stretch. Just do it.
Like everything is becoming like that.
And the last thing that was on my list that I didn't mention was full range of motion with load is a great form of mobility. So just doing the barbell back squat, but making sure that you're getting all the way to depth, holding that position, and that goes a long way too. So good form, full range of motion with load. All right, let's get into old MacDonald had a farm. Joe.
Me. Okay. So Old MacDonald. So there is a buy-in of a 100-meter plate pinch carry with a 45 or 25 or whatever you got. And I already can't remember if there was so it's one each side, I believe. And then after that 18 minutes max distance plate carry. So 2 hands on the plate, and you can't so it's not a farmer's carry, and you can't carry it on your shoulder or above your head. It has to be, within shoulder and waist. So kind of like bear hug if you want, but 2 hands on the plate for 18 minutes, max distance. Then, so that's part A, I guess, kind of. Then you have 18 minutes, as many reps as possible of 10 burpee over the plate. So put that plate on the ground, burpees over it. Then 10 ground to overhead, so with the plate, so you can do a tap the plate and then all the way up overhead. And then 10 Russian twists each side with that plate. And then 1 for extra credit plate flip if you are feeling safe and don't want to break your feet or
hit yourself in the chin.
Yeah, whatever it is. Extra credit.
Let's get some steel-toed boots.
Oh.
So 18 minutes, as many as possible of that 4 things. Once that 18 minutes finishes, you will do basically the reverse of what you did before that. 18 minutes max distance plate carry, and then cash out of 100-meter plate pinch. So I believe it is just the 1 plate pinch because everything we're doing is just with the one plate. But I don't remember if there was a stipulation of changing hands. I think it was just 100 meters, and it was.
You can change hands as needed during the 100 meters.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of like our tips, like what should you do?
How do you bring it up?
Yeah, this one's hard. As far as I don't have a lot of tips on this one. I liked, and I normally say this every time we do talk about this workout, just go the full plate pinch carry distance. Don't break it up, and just ruin your grip and have fun the rest of the workout. You're going to push yourself. You'll meet yourself if you do that. That's the point here, right? We're not trying to get
we're not trying to finish.
Or anything. Yeah, you're just trying to finish. So other than that, the grip, I don't have a lot for you other than just go fast and try not to game it, make it hurt. Does anybody else have anything?
You
Who's
have
next?
to choose.
I'm not gonna pick.
I said just don't stop moving. If you stop moving, then the pain catches up to you. So just go faster than the pain and you'll be fine. This one is a grind though, and it's deceptively a grind. I think some people, and I like it because it's one of those kind of odd objects thing. You're doing things that you're not typically doing during a training session, and most of our other Meet Yourself Saturdays don't have most of the things that we have in this workout. So I like it. It's different, but it is a grind, and your grip will go very quickly. And did you mention the stipulation, Joe, for the plate carry of where it has to be?
Yeah,
So,
can't be on
yeah.
your shoulder, and you have to have
Yeah.
both hands on it.
Right. So between your chin and your knees, and both hands on it at all times. So that makes it tough. That ups the difficulty of the workout. So, but this one is a grind, and so just keep moving through it. Listen to some angry music for this one. Go to that dark place. Ashley.
I said this is one of the few I've never completed. Well, no, I don't think I've ever done this one. But I just said pick your plate accordingly. For us people with carny hands, I'm thinking like for like the plate pinch. I don't think I could plate pinch even a 25-pound plate. I don't know. We'll have to see. But
You're not like pinching it like with pincers.
I know,
You're-
but
you're
you have
just-
to hold on to it. Like, hello.
You're doing this. I'm like, really hope you're not just like pinching.
No.
And yes, it's going to be hard.
We just found a challenge.
There we go.
Pincers.
Two fingers.
Just 2 fingers. Well, my music recommendation was EDM or some rap. I think rap would be good for this. Like I could listen to some NF while I was doing this.
This was intended to be done with like bumper plates. Obviously, if you have steel ones, then that's okay. But if you have like
that would suck.
if you have the plates with handles, don't use the handle because you're not supposed to use the handle on farmers. So I just want to kill someone's vibe right now, because there are those, especially if you have like the I don't know if Dick's has the ones with handles, but a lot of those iron ones will have handles. So yeah, meant to be done with bumpers. But if you don't have bumpers, then just use a different part of it that doesn't have a handle.
Disclaimer: don't do a freaking plate throw flip with a metal plate.
It might be easier to catch, especially if you have like the really fat bumpers.
Oh, I don't know. That sounds dangerous.
Yeah, see, my options for this one are either a metal 45 or the 25 bumper, because like I have the fat 45-pound bumpers, so like
Yeah.
trying to grip that thing, like trying to pinch that thing it's impossible.
Yeah, I think my 45s they got to be like 4 inches wide.
Yeah.
Like they're
They're
pretty
freaking
large.
huge.
Because
So
they're fake weight. Because
Fake weights.
we get
Made-
that so much.
Paper mache.
yeah. Yeah, not really a whole lot on. There's not really much else I got for this. I guess
Just
on
do
the plate carry, if you can, bear hug, and just like switch
have
off
to have
locking
both.
your forearms.
Mm.
Well, you can have your hands on it as long as you're.
You can just cross your hands underneath, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that wraps it up.
Wraps it up. Let's do it.
It's a fun one.
Yeah. All right. So go visualize, do a hard workout, and eat your vegetables and mobility. Big takeaways for today, if you only made it to the end. But for all of our athletes, we're nearing a new cycle. It is coming up. So that means testing is coming up, new cycles coming up. Always a great time around here. We have the webinar so you can learn more. So get on the email list. If you're not on the email list, go to currently, who knows when this published, just go to into3fitness.com. Don't worry, guys. All that will be fixed in the coming weeks. But you can go to into3fitness.com and sign up for 5 Line Friday if you're wondering, hey, how do I become part of this webinar? I know we normally publish the webinar too as a podcast episode, so you'll be able to listen to it. But actually, the visual is really helpful. On YouTube, we're Garage Gym Athlete now. Don't worry, it's all gonna be handled. And so you can watch the webinar there. new cycles. Testing is really important, and we'll talk more about that as it gets a little bit closer. But good luck and try hard on all those things. Maybe throw in some visualization this fit week. I think that was someone's recommendation here. I think it would be really helpful. If you want to get involved in a new training wave or cycle, just sign up now. You got a 2-week free trial that you could do. It's 14 days and you hop in, you could do our testing, get some benchmarks done, go into week 1, and then, really see if you like our training. So do that if you want to support what we're doing. But that's about all I have for this week. A lot of actions to kill comfort we've given you between just doing mobility, visualizing, and this very hard workout. So do it, because if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you. Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Thanks for listening.